name is Asida, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. It's a very topical discussion on protecting people by protecting data. And I'm excited to see the kinds of people that are represented on this call. Not only people who work in monitoring, evaluation, learning, people who typically work with data in their organizations, but even people with other responsibilities and other portfolios in various organizations who understand that when we talk about data, it's not just a responsibility or a duty for the MEL team, but everybody within any organization is responsible for keeping data safe and ensuring that the people behind the data are protected as well. So I am from Participatory Development Associates, PDA for short, and we are a social development consultancy that is based in Ghana, but we have operations all over Africa. And as you can imagine, like some of you on today's call, there is so much data that comes our way from participants, from our staff, from communities, from all sorts of programs that we work on and people that we work with. And so we've had quite a bit of experience, or 25 years of experience this year, of dealing with people's data and ensuring that it is protected, it is kept safe. And so on today's call, we will be sharing some of those tips, so some of those best practices for ethical and robust data protection with you. But even more especially, we also have representatives from the Data Protection Commission on call, and we will be hearing from them from the regulator's perspective, how exactly to ensure that we are not breaching any rules, not only of conscience, but also of Ghana when we are dealing with people's data. And so we are very glad to have you. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. First of all, you will notice that recording has already begun. We do hope and pray that you will not be too offended by the fact that we have begun recording. We seek your consent for it. It's mostly for documentary purposes. After the webinar, we will make sure to share the link to the recording on YouTube with all those who are participating, but also perhaps share freely for you to share with other people in your ambit of influence. So please pardon us as we record, but do take note that we have muted, per the features in Microsoft Teams, we have muted your microphones and your cameras, but the chat function and then the Q&A function are available for you. So if you have any comments to make, you want to introduce yourself, please feel free to do so in the chat section. We have a team that's on standby to deal with any questions that you send through, any remarks, any comments, any experiences that you want to share. You can feel free to do so. But after the key speakers are done with their main presentations, we will give the opportunity for questions and answers. In that case, just raise your hand at any point. We will call on you and enable your microphone, enable your camera if you so desire, so that you can speak as you wish. Thank you very much for being with us. And without further ado, we want to kick off today's meeting by handing over to our representative from the Data Protection Commission. I understand we have some more of his team members on call. So I'll hand over to him first of all. He will speak, and then perhaps those from his team will also have a moment to introduce themselves to everyone on call. So Mr. Enoch Isuman, if you are with us and you can hear us, the ball is in your court.
Thank you once again and the entire team for the opportunity. The Commission has a mandate and we stand very firmly on educating the whole public on data protection and privacy. So when some of these opportunities come our way, we don't take it for granted at all. We come in full to do our best to educate the people and make sure, like you rightly said, we are not just fulfilling our conscience, but legally we are making sure we are a good stance. First of all, I bring greetings from the Executive Director of the Commission and the management members who has entrusted this assignment to me. If he's hearing me, if they are all hearing me, I want to say a very big thank you to them. Like I said earlier, Dr. Arnold is very particular about ensuring all Ghanaians come to the understanding of privacy and data protection. So when some of these opportunities come on our table, It doesn't take it for granted at all. All protocols observed. Today we are talking about protecting people by protecting data. So we've lived in days where gold defined economic strength, oil shaped global powers and industry. But today, data is deemed as the new digital gold. So it's no more of the physical gold again, but today if you have data, you are deemed as, yes, the person with the economic strength, the person with the global power, right? So what then are we looking at when we talk about data? Let's look at this. When you see this picture, what comes to mind? When you see this frame, when you enter any place, or when this picture, what comes to mind? This is the only room in the whole world where we are very mindful of the footsteps behind the door. You enter this place and you are so much thinking of the footsteps you hear behind the door. That means there are some parts of our life, there are some parts of our personality, our personhood, that we do not want people to get exposed to, that we hold so much dear, that we cherish so much, that we don't want people to come to attention and the knowledge of it. So when you talk about data protection and privacy, are they the same thing? No. If they are not, then let's set the record straight. Think of it this way. Just as a computer or a laptop has a software and a hardware, where the hardware protects the software. In our rooms, we have TVs, we have our various home appliances, and we have our doors protecting those appliances. We have roof, we have ceilings, we have buildings protecting those appliances. In our cars, we have the bonnets, all those things protecting the engine. That is the same with privacy and data protection. So privacy is your control of what to share, what you can allow people to have access to. And data protection is the physical or the measures you put in place to ensure that those very particular things you don't want people to get access to are restricted. So think of it this way. While data protection is about safeguarding that particular information about you from misuse or unauthorized access, privacy is that particular info or that particular part of your life you don't want people to have access to. So in our human being, when I bring it my life as a human being, your dress, the dress you are wearing right now, is data protection. And your inside, the part you've covered, is privacy. I hope we all have understanding of that. Let's proceed to a brief introduction of data protection and privacy in Ghana. After the Second World War, privacy became a global concern. Through the wisdom of our forefathers, our leaders, in the 1992 Constitution, they put Article 18.2 to protect the privacy of individuals. And by that, the Act of the Commission, the Data Protection Act 2012, was passed. The Act gave room for the Commission to be the single sole authority to ensure privacy and data protection in Ghana. Let's look at the powers and the mandate of the Commission. The Commission has one singular mandate: protecting privacy and personal data of individuals as a fundamental human right. That's all what the Commission is seeking to do. We want to make sure that your privacy is protected. Data protection concerning you is protected. And we do so by doing a myriad of things. We have enforcement. Those of you who followed us on our conference, our 2026 conference, you realize that this year, 2026, is our year of enforcement. So those of you on the call, those of us who have not registered yet, those of us who are not complying, we should take this into account. We'll be coming after you. We are coming after you, and we are coming for you, because this is our year of enforcement. So we are going to do a lot of enforcement, and it's not going to be in silence. We are going to come in the open and it's going to be a public notice. So the whole Ghana, everybody across the world, everybody who is interested in data protection is going to know that you are not complying. So I would all our indulgence, if you are not complying, to do so quickly before we come knocking on your door. We grant registrations, and we also have the power to cancel registrations. We carry out random audits. That's one of the activities we are going to see very often in this year. We are going to come, we will notify you that this and this date, we want to come and audit. Who then is a data subject? Any person whose information is being taken by a controller. I've already explained the controller, so we know who the controller is. So if it's once or twice, any institution that you go, that they take your personal information, you are a data subject to them. We will look later at some of the rights you can exercise as a data subject. And then we have data processor. So the person who, on behalf of the data controller, processes personal information for the data controller. So let's say PDA has, perhaps PDA, they are using some tax. They don't produce the tax over there, but they give their staff names, perhaps their positions, to a third party to print the tax for them. So that third party printing the tax for them becomes their processor. So that third party will become data processor to PDA. I hope we have the same page. Let's look at consent. Consent is one of the very big subjects that we usually don't talk about. This is time will restrict me, but let me mention that when we are seeking consent of the people we take personal information from, that is our data subjects, we should be very meaningful and transparent with them. When you want to process someone's personal information and you are taking it from the person individually, you have to be very transparent with them. Let them understand what you are using the information for, how long you even intend to store the information after use. That is what consent means. Consent means the person fully understands and knows what the data is going to be used for and agrees. The person understands from A to Z what you're going to use the information for, and he's still saying that, okay, I understand, so go ahead and use the information. That is what consent means. So before anyone will say, I consent to this, I consent you processing my personal information. If you're a researcher, if you go to the field, before the people, you let the people, yes, go ahead. You have to make sure that they understand everything you're going to use the personal information for. Now let's look at these special categories of personal data. Section 37 makes it very clear that processing all the information you see here is prohibited. Let me touch on perhaps one or two because of time. Let's look at a child under parental control. In Ghana, we call them minors. We've had instances where people grew up and they had to file complaints for the way their data their personal data were handled when they were children. And let's know that a child who is a minor does not have certain rights. And there are some who might not even have the opportunity to, because they might not even understand what you are doing the personal information, to even give consent to. So we are saying that before you process some of this personal information, it has to be perhaps by vital interest. The situation is very critical, life-saving. This is life and death situation. They can go ahead and process some of this information, or is backed by law, perhaps to fulfill a legal obligation. Other than that, you don't have any business processing some of this personal information because they are very, very, very special. Political opinions. When you process some of this, you are inherently putting yourself in a compromising situation where you are not going to be fair with the processing of the personal information. We had similar situation about a year ago where we had some staff being, because we did they were affiliated to some political parties. But imagine HR is collecting personal information of all the employees, and does not take the political leave off, or let me even do the trade union or membership of the particular person. So I would say that according to Section 37 of the Data Protection Act 2012, but I said, I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Great. So according to Section 37, processing of this special category of data is prohibited. So if you have no business, if it's not vital, if it's not life and death, if the law does not mandate you, you're not fulfilling any legal obligation, you don't have to collect it at all. Now let's quickly look at the processes involved in registering the commission. Section 97 makes it very clear that once you, even Section 27 says once you intend to process personal information, so the person who, or the organization, the entity who has not even yet started, but the point of thinking that I want to start processing, I want to start going out to the field, talking to people, gathering data, you are data controller and you are supposed to register with the commission. So it's very clear, very legally binding. Once you intend to process personal information, you are supposed to register. How do you do that? The registration process is quite simple. You go to our website. Thankfully, the processes are outlined there, so you just have to read and follow. Then you do the registration. Now let's look at the requirements. Once you're a registered entity in Ghana, you are in a good position to register the commission. That is the primary requirement. What other things do you need? You need your incorporation, certificate of incorporation. If you have certificate commencement, that is the time you commence business. There are some people, some entities that were incorporated later on, then they commence business. So if you have that, that becomes a plus for you to avoid penalties, further penalties. Now, you also need an active email address. Once you have your incorporation, you have your TIN number, an active email address. And then, very importantly, you need an account handler. Someone who is, if not permanent, someone who is going to be in that particular organization for a longer period of time. Someone who is not intending to leave the commission, the organization anytime soon. You need an account handler. We have situations where people handle some part of the registration. When it gets to renewal, the person who started the registration will not be there, and they might not necessarily have handed over fully their succession policy wasn't so clear, so they don't hand over all those details properly. So you end up having duplicates in the system. You need an active person to handle the account. Let me state categorically that registration is certification. We have a lot of pending transactions in the system. People go to the system, they input registration, pay money, and they go to sleep. Once you don't have your certificate, you are not registered. Once you don't have your certificate, your name is not in a data protection register. So please, if you are registering, follow up till you get your certificate. Section 49 makes it very clear. Follow up till you get your certificate. That is where we can say that, yes, indeed, you are registered with the commission. Now, any other serious matters? Let's look at a few of the data subject rights. We are gradually fully integrating digital in Ghana. So our digital economy is on the page growth. As a data subject, you have certain rights under the Act, right from Section 35, 39 through to 44. All these rights are outlined there. They are for you. You have to exercise them. If you don't exercise them, trust me, like I said, data is the digital gold in our generation, and illegal mining has already started. people are seeking data and they want to process it unlawfully. So if you don't exercise your right, if you don't ask questions, if you don't demand your right, people are going to process your information irresponsibly. You mean with it. So these are your right. When you have time, just go through the section 35, 39, 2 to 44. The Act outlines your right. And the good news is when you go to our website, we've explained all of these things there. So you just click on it, all these rights are explained there. Let's look at briefly some data privacy breaches. When you even talk about a breach, what is a breach at all? Laws, unauthorized access, unauthorized disclosure, distraction. This mission is what we call data breach. So when an authorized person, when you unfortunately or mistakenly hands over an authorized person and information that is not intended for that person, you are breaching and there are consequences. Time will fail us to go into it. Now let's look at everyday occurrences that leads to data breach. Indiscriminate sharing of files. We realize that NS has done a research on floods in urban areas. So NS, can you share the data you received from when you went out, when you did the research? Can you give me the data? Then NS will say, oh, okay, oh, you are my brother, you are my friend, a colleague, so why not share the files with you? When you do that, when you share those files that contains the personal information of the data subject, without their consent, you are breaching their privacy right. Also, when you use unsecure public Wi-Fi, Ghana, we like that a lot. When you see Wi-Fi everywhere, free Wi-Fi, we go to hotels, we go to conferences, seminars, we see free Wi-Fi. We are very eager to log in. The first question is, what's the password? Please, you are opening yourself up for a potential breach. So if you do that, then if you have a VPN, that's great. You are securing yourself. But if you don't, please be cautious of the public Wi-Fi, public networks you use. Also, leaving screens and monitors on at work. You go out to the field, perhaps you want to use the washroom, you want to excuse yourself, see a visitor off. Then you leave your screen off. Anybody who comes to see, because processing includes viewing. So anybody who views your screen, sees the information on your screen, has processed personal information unlawfully. And that person, mind you, is an unauthorized person. So we are breaching the data subject privacy. Now let's look at prioritizing data. As just a moment. Prioritizing data, we have to stay informed with data protection and privacy regulations. A new bill is being developed to respond to these modern realities. The increased usage of artificial intelligence, continuous sophisticated systems, automated decision-making machines and things. A new bill is being developed as a data controller, as a data subject, data processor. The onus lies on you to ensure that you keep yourself updated with some of these regulations. You have to think privacy, academics, researchers, policy developers. You have to think privacy right from the start. Before you even commence any process, before you even commence any activity, you have to think privacy. Be privacy conscious. When you do that, you'll be mindful of the way you take and process people's personal information. What should you know? This year, like I said, the Commission is embarking on a very serious enforcement activities, because this is our year of active enforcement. So you are supposed to know this and put your house in order. If you are not complying, if you're not registered, it simply means you are not being accountable the personal information you are taking. So you have to know registration, like I said, is mandatory. Once you are registered entity in Ghana, you are supposed to register. There's a growing need of compliance framework in Ghana because of the sophisticated systems that are coming in place, the increased artificial intelligence tools people are using.
there is this growing need of it. So as an entity, as a data subject particularly, you are supposed to ensure that you are privacy conscious. You know your rights. You know data protect. You ask the right questions. And you have to, as a controller, as subject, you are supposed to be mindful of your obligations under the Act. I'll leave us with this. This is smooth. Privacy and data protections begin with you. I want you to take a moment and think about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Enoch. Privacy and data protection begins with you. Very thoughtful words. And for all of us, the onus is on us to be able to keep abreast with all the changes that are happening when it comes to data and laws about data protection within the country. So thank you very much, Enoch, from the DPC. We're very grateful. I'm sure people have questions. I myself was jotting down a few questions, but please make sure to either put it in the chat or in the queue, use the Q&A functionality. After our next speaker, we will open the floor for general questions and answers so that they can be dealt with depending on where your question is most relevantly directed. With that said, we will now hand over to our second speaker for today. He's the person of Ernest Eduowusu, and he is PDA's own data protection supervisor. Enoch mentioned being certified, being registered with the DPC. PDA has gone through that process, and we have someone on our MEL. He's our MEL specialist on the team, and he intentionally went through a training process with the DPC to be a certified data protection supervisor. So Ernest, you're very welcome. If you're with us, you can unmute, put on your camera, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Asada. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. I would want to thank you and everyone on the call, to Enoch for the great introduction and also the knowledge you shared on data protection generally here in Ghana. It has indeed become a very important area of concern, which is being picked up by all authorities, including our own data protection commission ensuring compliance. We at PDA, we work with people for the past 25 years. The work we do is mainly centered on people. With the knowledge that we have on data protection, we here at PDA, how do we ensure that the privacy of the people that we work with, the data subjects, the participants of in various programs are protected? So I think this conversation has become very important, also because, like Enoch mentioned, data protection issues and then compliance is of top priority to the Commission. So we as donors, as implementing partners, as development organizations, what then are we doing to ensure that the people that we work with are protected? So given the nature of the work that we do, we are usually working with the marginalized group, vulnerable people. So how do we ensure that these people are not even put to risk? Like I mentioned, the data that we just don't see numbers. We see people behind those numbers. If we implement a program, for instance, a nutrition program, and then we try to assess the diversity in the diet of the people, we just don't develop indices, we just don't present figures, but indeed we look at how people are living their real life. And we are also conscious of the fact that when we misuse this data, we put people at risk. If we allow unauthorized access to this data. For example, we end up putting the lives of people at risk. And we, the institutions, the partners, and the donors involved, we may just visit them and they come, but then we not really know what we are doing to the people. We end up putting their information out there. So why should the issue of data protection even be of importance at all? Not touch on some of them, but we, from where we sit and from the work that we do, handling data wrongly or mishandling data erodes the trust that the people, the data subjects have in us. So donors or funders implement programs. We go in there to help them understand the impact that those programs are having on the people. So you go in there, they hardly know you, you engage them, they trust you with their information. Then the onus or relies on us to ensure that this data that the people, the data subjects has trusted in us, we have every mandate to protect the data and ensure that there is no unauthorized access to this data, which can lead to which can cause any harm to the data subject. Now, we should also be bothered about the issue of data protection and privacy, because as Enoch already mentioned, there are some legal underpinnings that if we don't comply, if we don't handle the data in the best possible ways, we will get ourselves into. So we need to ensure that we don't get into any legal issues with the regulatory body, that is the Data Protection Commission. Now, handling data or protecting data does not only benefit the participants or the data subjects, we as implementers and as funders as well. If for instance, a funder invests into a program or runs a program, and then the data coming from the program is exposed to people who can pick it up and cause any harm to the participants, it questions the integrity of the funder, right? Because like I mentioned earlier, these data sets trusted their data in you, in your hands to protect it. So you see that the issue of data protection cuts across all angles. In as much as we're trying to protect the people involved, we also try to look at how it's going to benefit the implementers as well as the funders. Before Enoch ended, he mentioned that they do compliance audits and ensure that there are policies in place. Yes, we at PDA, we have all our policies in place, but we just don't have the policies. We ensure that those policies are implemented. So we ensure that the policies are not just on sheets, right? Or they are not just buried in documents. We have our systems in place to ensure that we are implementing those policies. So right from the design of a program. So for over here, privacy by design, we don't think about privacy after we've enrolled the program, but right after, even before we begin engaging any data subject, even before we begin implementing any program, privacy is the first thing that we look at. So right from the process of engaging our partners, to development of our tools, to training our enumerators, to collecting the data, to analyzing, we make sure that this system is set, that we apply the principles of data protection. So we get to understand more how we do that in the coming slides. Yeah, so here at PDA, how do we ensure that the privacy of the people that we work with, the data subjects that we work with, are protected? So earlier, like I mentioned, from the start of any program, we make sure that the purpose for the program is clearly defined for each evaluation that we are doing, for each research that we are doing. We define the objectives. What are we going out there to do? Usually, our clients have interest in what they want. And for us, that guides exactly what we also go out there to clarify. We make sure that the needs of the clients is exactly what we go out there to collect. So we just don't set out questions and then decide to go out there to collect. So we state clearly the objectives before we move on onto collecting the data. And for us, one key legal requirements or legal basis from which we process the data that we collect is consent. And for each project that we implement, we ensure that the consent that we give is informed. There's enough information in the consent to let the data subject, right, or the participants either agree or disagree his or her participation in the program that we do. So in our consent, the consent script that we use is usually put into sections, about 8 or 9 sections, making sure that we cover every aspect of information that the data subject needs to know, so that we don't leave them in the dark. We carry them along. So we begin by introduction. So our consent form usually typically has an introduction section which introduces us as PDA, where we are coming from, what we do. And then it also introduces or mentions the client's name, because obviously we are there to engage the data subject on behalf of the client, right? As a result of the data subject's participation in a particular program that is being implemented by the client. So we make the data subject understand where we are coming from, what we do, even let them understand where we got their data or their information from. Then we move on to explain the purpose of the project or the reason why we are there. We make sure that they understand clearly why we are there for. Also, we let them understand that so for this review or for this research or data collection that we are doing, what does participation involve? So the consent form spells out we go as far as in telling them the average number of minutes that the interview, for instance, will take. And then we also let them understand that participation is voluntary. They can either decide to participate or not. Even if they agree to participate, they can withdraw at any time along the interview. We let them understand that participation or not participating has no influence on their participation in the program, right? So whether they're engaging in the interview or not, it's not going to affect the program for which we are there. We let them understand some of the data that we'll be collecting. So things like their demographics information, if it's a review, a research on economic status of the people, we let them mention some of the data that we'll be collecting. We let them understand their rights as data subjects, right? The rights to be informed, the rights to give and withdraw consent, and the rights to access their information, the right to prevent process, and all the data subjects. We make sure that these participants understand or know their rights under the Data Protection Act. So after we explain all this, we then give them an opportunity to decide, right, whether to participate in the data collection exercise or the interview or not. We also have referral information. So usually you have myself there as the data protection supervisor, And we also have whoever will be leading that particular research or evaluation. We have their contact information. They just to let the data subjects reach out should they want to maybe withdraw their consent later, or they want to seek clarification. And so for us, we do all this even before we move into the implementation of the program. So our thinking usually at the start of any project is to bring forward the privacy of the people that we work with. Now we have this another phase of the activity that we put in place before data collection begins or starts is to train our enumerators, and also because we usually do nationwide surveys, we do nationwide evaluations, nationwide research across all the regions, all the 16 regions. We go there and work. So we usually work with enumerators, whom we call the associates, right? So these enumerators are experienced enumerators that we usually work with most of them. All the enumerators we work with have a minimum of a bachelor's degree, and they should have worked for a minimum of 2 years. So we put across the experience enumerators, and in the before we study data collection, we take them rigorous training so they understand the project that we are doing. They understand the sorry, please can you go back? Hello, can you hear me? Can you go back to the slide on before data collection? Yes, yeah. So we let them understand into details what data protection is and the rights of the data subjects. We also train them on safeguarding. PDA has a safeguarding policy, and like I mentioned, we just don't put our policies, write them and put them on our shelves. We make sure that these policies are indeed implemented. So we let them go through our safeguarding policy. We let them understand what it means to guard and protect the participants that we are going to interview. So we do all this to ensure that the privacy of the participants or the data subject we are going to engage is assured. If data collection is ongoing, how do we manage risk? We look at the issue of potential breach. And the next slide. I also have to add that for our enumerators, we have a standard operating procedure for them, which spells out their responsibilities, how to engage the data subjects, how to seek the consent. And let me also add that in our consent, we usually have a jurat clause, which so that clause is activated when the data subjects cannot read and understand English, where we have to explain the consent to him or her. So we make sure that the consent that we take is very clear and also informed without hiding any information. So during data collection, what do we do? Like I mentioned earlier, we don't go there to collect any data, right? We are always guided by the principle of data minimization, which basically means that we collect as much as we need. So we collect only the information that will help us respond to our evaluation questions, that will help us respond to our research questions. So we collect only the information that will help our clients understand the impact of their project. So these are some of the things that we do. So we also ensure the privacy during the interviews. And here at PDA, because of privacy and data protection issues, one, we collect data with our own tablets. These enumerators that I'm talking about, we don't allow them to use their personal devices at any point to collect the information of the participants. So our teams always have PDA owned tablets, and they are not supposed to transfer any information from the tablets onto their personal devices. You're not supposed to collect the data with your personal device. So at the end of the day, we give the tablets to them at the point of deployment. They use it for the work. And also because of safeguarding, and then because privacy is part of our design always, we make sure that we even regulate the movement of our enumerators on the field. So what we do is we have accommodation for the team. It's a team of 4. We have they all lodge in the same hotel. We have we provide them with vehicles for the traveling, the movement to the field. So all these are done to ensure that no one is going out of the plan during data collection. So with the tablets, we control the tablets from within. So when there is a loss, right, all the tablets are password protected anyway. So when there is maybe a reckless, when the tablet gets missing, we are able to lock the tablets from our office here in Accra, wherever they are. So we have access, and we're able to map, right? We're able to map and control all the tablets. So all these are some of the privacy measures that we put in place. And also with the platform that we use for data collection, PDA has an in-house server which we use to receive data. So again, the privacy of the people that we work with and then work for is of importance to us. So our servers are in-house, in-country, so that we don't transfer data beyond the borders of Ghana, because the Act clearly states that any data that is transferred out of the country, there should be enough regulation in place to protect the data subjects, the information of the data subject that is coming from Ghana, right? And because of the platform we use, we may not be able to have that. So we have our in-house server, which is located in our Accra office. So all the data that we collect are being synchronized. So after each day of data collection, the data is sent onto our servers here in Ghana to ensure, and then the server, the movement of the data in and out of the server is encrypted. Even the administrators of the server do not have access to the data. They just set up the software aspect and the hardware aspect of the server. The data protection supervisor is the only one who has access to the data, and then it is given to the necessary there's a person working on the subject, working on the research or the evaluation of the project based on the least privilege. That is as much as they will need to be able to carry out their work. So we put all this in place to ensure that we are protecting the privacy of the data subjects that we work with. Like I explained earlier, there are clear SOPs for our enumerators when they are on the field collecting data. Okay, so let's look at really what happens on the field. Usually breaches, they may not be intentional. In the instance like we do here, it may not be intentional. Like I think give an example. You may go somewhere, you may be eating, you may forget the tablets there, and then you drive and go. When something like this happens, there are protocols clearly defined in the SOP for the enumerators to how to report. So first report to your team leader. Your team leader then reports to the data protection supervisor. Then we pick the code the code of the tablets. And if necessary, we will lock the tablet from within our office to ensure that no one gets access to the data on the tablet. So we put all these systems in place so that with the end goal of protecting the privacy of the data subjects that we work with. Next slide. Okay, now after we've collected the data, I already explained that on the field, while data collection is ongoing, we don't wait for the data collection to completed before our enumerators send the data to us. So the data is sent onto our server, and the data protection supervisor is the only one who has access to that data. No staff at PDA here has access directly to the server and to the data. Like I mentioned, the data is shared using the principle of least privilege. So even before the data will be shared, we don't, even within PDA, we don't share the data with personal identifiers. So what we do is the data protection supervisor will anonymize any data that is leaving his or her desk so that it can't be identified. We make sure that all personal identifiers are anonymized, and usually in reporting back to our clients, we present the data in analyzed form. So in analysis, we are looking at a pool of the responses such that even if you have your report, you will not be able to identify any individual who participated in the data in the survey. What you'll be able to do is the aggregates. Okay, so you put so if let's say we are looking at the income of the people that we engage, we're able to tell the average income and not even the individual income of the people, right? That is what we share. Rarely do we share even raw data with the clients unless it is stated, right? Which, in addition to all the anonymizations and the securities that we have in place here, we make sure that before we share the data with any partner, one, the data is anonymized, and two, we have a data sharing agreement in place. So we do all this to ensure that we are complying and also protecting the privacy and the rights of our data subjects. Yeah, so I think I've already spoken about it, that we just don't share data anyhow, because the movement of the data comes with its own what do you call it, responsibilities. And even before we share the data, we make sure that one, we have a data sharing agreement between ourselves and the client that partnered us to carry out the research or the evaluation. And also we share anonymized data. We don't share data with personal identifier, because we believe that these can lead to breaches. Also, in sharing our data, what we do is we give role-based access to our partners, such that we give those role-based access to our partners to access the data on our server. So what we do is that when you are giving that access, you can only have access to what we have, what we want you to see. Is that okay? So that is what we do. Even in sharing, we make sure that we have all this. So data subject rights is very important. So we have a retention policy that explains to the data subjects for how long we are going to keep their data, and also the fact that we have a data subject request form if the data subjects want to access any of the information that we hold on their behalf, if permissible, we then let them fill the data access request form for us, which has, the kind of data that they want to assess, how the data should be shared. We also have the duration within which we can work on and share the data with them. So we have all this in place. And then, like I mentioned, even on our consent form, we have contact numbers there, emails, and direct phone numbers that enumerators can reach. The data subject can reach out to if they want to either withdraw their consent or make amendments, or even take out any of their data. Okay. Yeah. So what happens? We don't usually expect there to be any breach, right? We don't expect things to go wrong by an accident that's happened. So I've already touched on some of the processes that we go through to ensure that we handle breaches. Okay. So when there is a breach and it's reported to the supervisor, the data protection supervisor will assess it, and if necessary, per the act, we will then onward report the breach to the commission, right, to probably advise or take the necessary action. So if things go wrong, these are some of the things that we do. Now, what can other organizations also do? Next slide. Yeah, so like I mentioned, I said that here at PDA, we have standard consent scripts, right? That contains enough information to get the data subject informed about whatever that we are doing. So those scripts are used for all projects. I mean, obviously we update it based on the focus of the project. But then the key elements are always there. What participation means, what their rights are, who to contact if it becomes necessary that they want to seek clarifications, withdraw their consent, or do anything. So we have all those in place. We have enumerator SOPs that spells out the rules of the enumerator, how to their responsibilities as well, how to even administer the consent, how to report a breach, and also all these processes are outlined in us in the SOPs, which we think other partners can as well adapt. And like I mentioned, we have secure data collection tools. We use Kobo Collect, but then our Kobo Collect is hosted in country. So the server is hosted in country. So I mean, partners can also explore ways. So we have access controls and incident logs. Already I spoke about the fact that we usually have role-based access, okay? And then data is shared based on the principle of least privilege. So again, not everyone, even on the research team, will have access to the very raw data that we get from the field. Usually, those who be analyzing the data we receive anonymized data. But if we collect personal identifiers, all those personal identifiers are anonymized, such that even the one working on the research is unable to identify who was interviewed. We have incident logs where whatever, if there's a breach, whatever happens in the process of the data collection or whatever happens in the data life cycle, we are able to document it, right? We're able to document everything just to track what we are doing and how we are doing it. Next slide. Okay, next slide. So what can donors then do separately? Okay, if you probably contracting a client or a consultant, you should ensure that there is enough budget, right, to ensure that the privacy of the participants of your program are protected. Ensure, I mean, usually in the terms of reference, you can bring in some of these requirements, right? The consent processes, I mean, the data storage, where are they even storing the data? Donors should be interested in all these processes and not just the outcome of the evaluation, the research, but I mean, you should be interested in where the data of the participants of your program are being hosted or are being stored. How long is even the client or here the implementer, right? How long are they even going to retain, or how long are they going to store the data that they've collected from your program participants? So usually, generally, ethics, data protection, and privacy, it's not just assumed, right? We need to make enough resources available to ensure that we have all these systems in place, one, so that we can protect the privacy of the people that we work with. Next slide. Okay, so final reflection. Again, data protection does not mean that we shouldn't do what we do. It does not mean that we shouldn't assess the impact of the program that we are running. Data protection does not mean that, okay, if you are saying that I'm not going to collect the data at all. No, that is not what we are saying. But what we are saying is that make sure that you handle whatever data you are collecting with care. Over here at PDA, what we do is any work that we do, we see people beyond the numbers. We just don't say, oh, we've collected this number of people, collected income, collected educational level. We don't leave it there. So we collect the data already, but we ensure that we are putting in the right systems and the procedures to protect the people so they can also feel protected and not harmed. Yeah, so finally, that is a final reflection that we are not saying don't collect data. Collect it, but make sure that you are protecting the data of, you are protecting the data subjects. So throughout what we do and the discussion that we've gone through so far, these are the various sections within the Data Protection Act 2012 Act 843. These are the various provisions that guides what we do at PDA. Now, here at PDA, we are committed to participant dignity in all studies that we do. We ensure ethical safeguards across the data lifecycle, like I said, right from conceptualization, right from design to enumerator training, to the data collection, to analysis, to post-analysis. We make sure that we apply the right safeguards, we apply the right ethics, we apply the right data protection principles. We continue to train our enumerators. So for each project, an enumerator may be engaged in project A. If project A ends today, and then that enumerator qualifies to also be engaged in project B, even tomorrow, we will still train that enumerator. Because over here, we feel each project has its own requirements, needs its own understanding, and it has its own demand. So we provide continuous training for our enumerators, and issues of data protection, issues of privacy, issues of safeguarding cut across all the training that we do anytime. We're always transparent, like I took you through the consent form, right? We make sure that the data subject understands everything that we are doing. One thing that we do here at PDA is also when a client contracts us to implement a project on their behalf, we carry them along. We don't leave them in the dark and say, okay, you asked us to do this. We are done. This is your report. No. At every point, we keep on updating the clients. Okay, so you asked us to do this, do that. We've gone to the field. We are not meeting the people. We've gone to the field. This is the reality. This is what is happening. This is what we think should be done. Okay, so we then engage and carry the client along, and then PDA is a continuous learning organization. We keep on learning from each project that we do. We keep on learning from each partner that we work with. So these are commitments to what we do and to ensure that the data subjects that we work with are protected. Okay. Thank you very much for your attention. That's it.
Thank you, Ernest. Very exhaustive and very grateful for all those insights that you've brought. And I'm sure as you were speaking, sharing the example of PDA, a lot of the organizations were reflecting and asking themselves, what systems they have in place. We shared a poll and quite a majority of the people who have answered are saying that yes, they do have data protection policies in place, and yes, it is enforced. And so these webinars are good knowledge sharing platforms for us. And so we would love to open the floor now for you to bring up your questions, bring up your comments, remarks. Perhaps there's something you do differently in your organization, or there's something that has worked for you over the years you want to share with all of us on call. This is your moment. Please feel free to do so. All right. I see people are still ruminating on all that we've heard. And for me, one question that I have is perhaps to Ernest, because in your submission, it seems like PDA has really been very intentional about dedicating resources to ensure data protection. And I know that there may be some organizations here that are not quite as resourced, especially when it comes to that aspect of their work. And I'm just curious if there are some quick, low-cost takeaways that you really want to emphasize for them so that in their context, they can apply it, even if they are not at the point of investing quite as much as we have in ethical research and MEL.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. So the first one that I will talk about is to have a detailed and comprehensive consent in place, which obviously may not require much resource unless probably you would want to seek external assistance. But largely, you can have a very comprehensive consent in place, stating clearly what you are doing, the data subjects, their rights, their where you store the data. I mean, the consent largely it's something that can be done. And also, there should data sharing within the organization should not be as usual. Even if for any data that you share, you make sure that the data is encrypted, right? It's password protected, so that throughout the journey or throughout the path that the data will be traveling, you should be able to protect and that there wouldn't be any unauthorized access. And I think lastly, what they can do is also try and register with the commission, right? To be able to stay compliant. Yeah, so this would be my take on that. Thank you. So that I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. I was saying thank you very much for sharing. Three very strong takeaways for smaller organizations. First of all, to work on their consent forms to make sure that the data that they are taking in has all the right consent accompanying it. Second, to work on their data sharing to ensure that if they do need to share data within the organization or even externally, it is encrypted and it's protected so that it's not falling into the wrong kinds of hands. And thirdly, for them to register with the commission to ensure that they are not falling behind on any of the compliant requirements. Thank you for those three. I am still not seeing any hands up or people, bringing questions in. Margaret from Action Aid is mentioning, okay, Manuel, I see your hand. Margaret is mentioning.
Can I add something to you?
Feel very free. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So just adding to what Ernest just shared, compliance is not expensive, but rather intentional. So once you are intentional about compliance, you realize it's not in. From what PD has done so far, I can see this kind of investment, this kind of intentionality is from top down. So the board, the management understand and appreciate data protection and privacy. So I want to employ all the organizations, all the reps here, that if your management or your board does not have the buy-in, they don't understand and appreciate data protection and privacy, that is where you see compliance as expensive. You think that perhaps you are trying all your consent forms, those things, and it's still not working. You are pushing and it's still not working. But when you get their buy-in, when you make them understand and appreciate what data protection and privacy is, especially in our generation and where the world is going, you realize that compliance is very, very cheap. Thank you.
Thank you, Enoch. Compliance is cheap. All right, Emmanuel, your hand is up. I think you have permission to unmute, so you can ask.
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. And thank you to all the facilitators for this great session. I think data protection is something that is very key to all of us. I'm coming from Star Ghana Foundation, actually, so we also do a lot of data protection issues. Just a quick question around consent. So I've been to events where people start taking pictures without asking any consent, but then when I try to find out why they didn't ask. They mentioned that in the attendance sheet, so there's a tiny line down there that indicates that by writing your name on this attendance, you give consent for your pictures to be taken and all of that. So I don't know, maybe just to ask, do you feel this is a fair way to take consent from people, or even though it's written tiny there, it should still be asked generally? I just want that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel, for that question. You know, as a comms person, you've really put the nail on the head. So over to you, Ernest and Enoch.
Maybe I would want Enoch to first take a bite, then I comment.
So Enoch, the baton has been thrown to you first.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes.
Great. The question is a very important question. When we talk about consent, first of all, we have two types of consent. We have the explicit consent and the implicit consent. I will explain both. You see, organizations have a funny way of doing things, and people are adopting privacy policies which are longer than the Bible, use technical jargons that can confuse Supreme Court judges, and we just put a small checkbox there. I agree. These are not the right way. These are not how you seek consent from potential data subjects. Consent should be explicit. The person should understand. If the person cannot speak English, if the person does not understand the language you are communicating in, you should find a way of letting the person understand. And then we have the implied consent. For instance, you go to an event and you see a red carpet there, and go and stand on the red carpet. You are not telling the photographer that I'm giving you my consent, come and take picture verbally, but just by being on the red carpet, your picture, your autographs can be taken. Right? For now, to the question, that small checkbox there, that by filling this form, you agree to that your pictures now, even you see they've indicated clearly, if you do not want your pictures or your autographs to be taken, please sit here. So you just go and sit there. If you don't want your pictures, a small checkbox, that is not right. I think when you encounter some similar situation, you should be able to speak up and you should be able to exercise your right on that. It's not right. You should understand, and they should make it very visible and very explicit for you.
Okay, maybe not to add much, but just to also say that that small line there is just not enough, because you just asking the data subject that by doing ABC, you consent your picture to be taken. The data subject has to understand, right? That's why we say the consent has to be explicit. It has to understand what are you going to even use the pictures for, where are you going to use the pictures, right? And the purpose for taking it. So the data subject needs to understand all this, and so just a line like you mentioned cannot satisfy that. So the bottom line is just not enough to process the data.
Thank you very much, Ernest and Enoch. I see Salman's hand up, but also there was a question in the Q&A. Okay, there's even two questions in there. So I'm going to read those ones out, and then I'll give the floor for the answers before we call on Salma. So there's a question that there are cases where you would need an interpreter to assist in interviews and questionnaire administration. And what is the guarantee that the interpreter would not leak that information of the interviewee? And are there any safeguarding policies or, I guess, steps that can be put in place to protect the interviewee from the interpreter? So that's the first question about the role of interpreters in data protection. And then the second question in the chat is, can you explain visible and right? What should be done? Please explain the ways such data can be collected. So maybe answer that. Salma will be getting to you right after they answer these two questions. So both Enoch and Ernest, either of you can start. I hope our facilitators heard me.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay, so I mean, these are realities that we usually face here at PDA. And one way to potentially help that is to ensure that the enumerators that we take to the field are familiar with the local languages that are being used or spoken in the area. And that is a key requirement. So in our deployment, we make sure that if you are going to the northern part of Ghana, you should be able to, based on the communities that you are going, should be able to speak the local language there. In the instance where all these, I mean, we still go and we still need an interpreter, we get a person, right, whom we also train as well, right? We train on the field just like we train the enumerators to ensure that this person understand the issues of data protection, understand the work that we are doing, just like we engage the enumerators. They have the same SOPs to follow. And in most cases, if it becomes necessary, we'd have to enroll or include such a person onto our team to move with the team on the field so that we don't end up engaging different people or maybe always training different people to help with interpreting the questionnaire, right? Yeah. Was that question?
Yeah, that question is about visible and right. You mentioned that the need for consent collection to be, that it has to be, the request for consent has to be visible and right. So Zenobia just wants to know, how exactly should it be done? What are some of the ways such data can be collected?
Okay, so largely, like I mentioned, in the consent script or in the consent form one, there should be an introduction of who is collecting the data, where you are coming from. There should be the purpose, the reason for which you are collecting the data. And so you need to explain that in a language that the participants or the data subject understands. Now, what does it mean for the data subject to even give his or her data to you? Okay, you have to explain that to them. You have to let the data subject to understand his or her rights under the act. Okay, so the right to be informed, the right to give and withdraw consent, the right to stop further processing, the right to even amend their information. So you need to understand every right that the data subject has, all right, under the act. You should also give an information or a contact information which the data subject can easily reach out to. One, should they want to withdraw, should they want to more like exercise any of their rights, like withdrawing, like amending their personal information. So these are some information, right, that can go into a consent form to make it appropriate.
Right. Thank you very much, Ernest. And I'll discuss with you, perhaps we'll see if we can release a sample of PDA's consent form for those who have been on the call. So please, if you didn't register, do make sure to either respond to us by email, or if you don't mind sharing your email address within the chat, you do so that we can get back to you with that. All right, now Paul has a question in the chat, but Enoch, I'm going to ask you to answer that. He's asking about how we would infuse data privacy in regards to new technology. I think you referenced some new bills and all, but before we get to that question, Salma, if your question is still relevant, you can go on and unmute and ask your question.
Okay, thank you so much. This session was very enlightening. Yeah, so I just want to know, when donors request for an extensive demographic data, how can the MEL team apply data minimization principles? Thank you.
Can I?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so by extensive, so for us, the issue of minimization is premised on the request that we receive from our clients, right? So in this case, the minimization here, we will limit it to what the data is, what the client is requesting. Where we feel will be difficult to obtain, we will usually engage with the client, right? To let them understand that with this particular information that you want, it's extreme. We can't take it. For instance, if we want to take let's say the maybe the genotype or the blood group, or let's say even biometric information, we will engage you that this data or information may not be possible given the current circumstances, right? But then the minimization principle for us here is largely not taking something beyond the request of our clients. So we are a research firm, we can initiate a research. So maybe we can say that, okay, the list now, we have a list that we are going to, let's now take the opportunity to even take more information for our personal use, right? So that in that case, we are not applying the principle of data minimization. So when a donor comes up with their request, we engage them to know which is possible. As far as is possible, we'll go there and collect just as they need, as implemented for them. Hope I was able to respond.
I hope that has satisfied you, Salma. Thank you. There are still more questions coming up in the chat, but let's take two of the others who have raised their hand. So Mr. Bidor from Artisans Association of Ghana first, and then we'll hear from Abu, and then we can go back to the questions in the chat. So Mr. Bidor, over to you first. You can unmute your mic.
Okay. So can you hear me, Ansida?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. So thank you so much for this session. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. My question is renewal of certificate from data collection agency. At times you'll be there, then a call comes from somebody that we are calling from data protection agency for your renewal, and you have to pay to some momos and something. So I want to know the process so that we will not be find ourselves victims of these scammers. That's the question. Thank you.
Very relevant. Thank you. Enoch, this is right to you.
All right, thank you very much, Asada, and a very relevant question in this generation. But before that, let me add up to what Enes said concerning in his attempt to answer the question regarding the interpreters. I don't know if you did mention, but I want to add that any interpreter you are engaging, you should have an agreement with them. And the agreement they sign should be very explicit on the sharing of the data that they are privy to. When we even talk about, for instance, retention policy only applies after the data has left active processing. So when you are done with the data, how long do you keep it? That's what we call retention. So after their services are done, they share the information is what we are even looking at, right? So you should have an agreement with them. Be explicit on the pros and the cons, the do's and the don'ts after their services are done. Great. So now with the renewal, the system is engineered in such a way that
Enoch, you're back on mute.
Hello, Asada, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Hello, am I still audible?
Yes, you're audible.
All right, great. So with the renewal, the system is meted in such a way that once you are 3 months to expiry, the system will automatically send you a mail to commence your renewal process. This is done so that, first of all, you don't delay your renewal. You don't wait for your certificate to get expired before you renew. And secondly, if there are any pending issues, for instance, perhaps your compliance issues, your compliance is not up to tax, you lack some areas, you'll be able to do all these before the 3 months period, so that right after expiry, you have your new certificate. But it's very unfortunate that a lot of controllers do not pay, I wouldn't say pay attention, but they do not see this kind of mails. Their concern is my set is expired, so they are waiting for it to get expired before they commence the renewal process. So the commission adopted a policy that if that's the case, then let's take it upon ourselves to remind the controllers prior to their expiry to start the renewal process, so that you don't come back to say that I did not see the mail the system sent or anything. That the commission has taken the proactive step to inform you of the mail that your certificate is nearing expiration, so you have to commence the renewal process. Now, because of digitization and increased concerns about these payment platforms, the commission has opened up the payment platforms. So now we can even pay via Momo. We can use Ghana Pay, primarily Ghana.gov, right? And only make payment to the commission issued invoice. Let me state it again. Only the commission's issued invoice. Every invoice the commission issues has a unique reference number. So if the commission has not issued you an invoice, please do not make the payment. And on the invoice, all those approved channels of payment are there, and the account numbers are there. If you need any clarification, if you are unsure of who is reaching you, these days, cameras are everywhere. People are trying, people are bragging in the dark web, the number of people, organizations they've able to hack, the people they've able to. So they are everywhere, but we should be cautious of these things. So if you are unsure of anything, please call us. You go to our website, we have various departments and their numbers over there. Call any of them and be sure. That is if you are unsure. But once the commission issues you an invoice with that unique reference number, the bank details on it, the various payment channels there, you can go ahead and make the payment. I believe that satisfies the question.
Okay. Thank you, Enoch. But don't go off mute yet. While you are on floor, perhaps you can answer the question about data privacy relating to new technology, the way that AI has been so involved in data collection and registration at events. And even in meetings like this, we have some AI readers. How can we make sure that data privacy is ensured despite all this?
I was about to ask you the same question when I saw the AI being part of the chat. Right. Okay, great. It's a very great question. We have emerging technologies and this AI making things sophisticated. Now, a very key thing in data protection is what we call Data Protection Impact Assessment, DPIA. Ernest said earlier that data protection should not be an afterthought. Right from commencement, it should even begin before you commence the particular system you want to create or the particular you want to create. So you have to first of all do data protection impact assessment. You ask the right questions, how solve or mitigate any potential. You can't deal with all of them, but at least you deal with 70 to 90% of the potential breaches, potential risk that can come when the system is built or when you go live. So though we are not dealing with everything, we are tackling majority of it, because when you do DPI, you are anticipating future risk that can happen. So we are asking questions, we are thinking ahead. These AI, these cyber people, we are thinking ahead, and we are solving a future problem now, or the ones that you can solve. We are putting mitigation measures there so that if it happens, not be escalated, they will be resolved in time.
All right. So are there some practical steps, perhaps, for example, that organizations should try and put in place to ensure that they have all this future proofing of data protection breaches in place?
That is for training, that is for awareness.
Okay, all right. Ernest, if you have any ideas you can add on apart from the training.
Yeah, so I think
Okay, go ahead, Ernest.
Yeah, I mean, not much to add to what Enoch has already said. Just for us to be very intentional for data protection, whatever we do, we need to be intentional about it. First, to assess the potential effects that activities will have on the privacy of the data subjects that we are dealing with, which for me is very important and key. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I believe we can take our final question from Abu Musa. Oh, and Tony's hand is also up. So let's perhaps take those two questions. They would be our last two, and then we can get the answers. So Abu, first ask your question, and then maybe Tony can also ask his, and then we decide whether Ernest or Enoch would answer each.
All right. Thank you, Asila. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the speakers too for their insightful session. In line with the theme of protecting people by protecting data, that means that the whole thing is not about the data, but we have human beings to in mind. So which we are going to look for, we are going to look at human dignity, we'll talk of trust, then we also look at safety. So with this in mind, I have observed in community settings that participants often assume that every piece of data collected from them is necessary and will directly benefit them. So I want to know from Ernest and Enoch, is there any practical experience as to how can facilitators clearly communicate the purpose and limits of data collection in a way that manages expectations while still maintain trust and ethical standards?
All right, I believe that's quite a straightforward question. Thank you. But Tony, can we hear it from you as well so that the moderators can respond to both questions at once?
Yeah, thank you, Asida, and thanks PDA for this opportunity, and thanks Enoch and Ernest for the presentations, which have been very illuminating. This question for me goes to Enoch, since he's from the Commission. We trying to register with the Commission, and I think we went on the website, did the necessary things, and then we got slammed with arrears. And I want Enoch to explain how come we are now starting the process. We are not registered, and then we are being told we have arrears to pay. We've written to get clarification. We've not gotten a response. So Enoch, please explain with diagrams.
All right, so this goes to you, and perhaps Ernest, you can think of the answer to the first question then. Someone is requesting Enoch's email or contact information. So again, we'll liaise with him, and if he's comfortable with sharing that, we would make sure that people...
Data protection issue.
Data protection, right. So Enoch, over to you, please.
All right, great. First of all, I would want to know your organization so that I let the team respond to you ASAP, and then to address the arrest issue. Section 97 of the Act states that once you are registered in Ghana at the commencement of the commission, which was in 2015, you are supposed to register. You are supposed to register with the commission within 21 working days. Now, if you're already in existence before the commission came, so let's say you were incorporated in 1995, in 2001, and then the act was passed in 2012. So in 2015, when the commission started active registration, if you were so incorporated before the enactment of the commission, you have 3 months to register. That's according to Section 97. So once, let's say, you were incorporated in 2022 or 2023, you have 21 days to register with the commission. If you were incorporated before 2015, you were supposed to have registered 3 months when the commission came into active registration process. This is not my saying. This is what Parliament gave us, that if you don't do this, if you don't go by these timelines, you have a penalty to pay. So I would really wish we can waive off the arrest for you, but unfortunately, this is what Parliament has given us. This is the law. And like Enes said earlier, now no one can plead guilty again. No one can plead ignorant again. We've gotten too far to plead ignorant. So data protection and privacy. That's why I was saying that the earlier you register, the better for you, because we are coming enforcement, we are coming full force, and we are coming to all those who have not registered. So if you are not registered, the more your years pile, the more arrears you're going to pay. Right. But then I want to know your organization so that we can speak more after this meeting and then see how best we can resolve this. But that is a basic explanation of the areas. Please, the person who asks, are you okay?
Yeah, thank you very much. Very helpful to know. I think I'll follow up later through Asida. I'll get back to you so that your team can facilitate it quick for us. And,
sure.
Hopefully waive some of the arrears for us. You ignore Parliament, now you have to implement, and don't make it difficult. Don't make it difficult for those who are willing to.
Exactly.
Anyway, so I'll get back to you. Thanks for the explanation.
All right, you're welcome.
Very, very helpful. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, Ernest, I think you can give the final words to in answer to Abu.
Yeah, so I mean, Abu, usually managing expectations, it's very important, especially if you are dealing with communities and you are dealing with program participants. So here at PDA, practically what we do is to, again, at the consenting phase, we explain to the understanding of the participants while we are there. Okay, we explain that. So we work with the partner to understand how the program, the participant understand the program. It may be a nutrition program, but in the books, it might have a different name. You can't take that to the field. Go to the field, engage the partner to understand how they explain the program. Maybe the program that you meet every 2 weeks in the school, or maybe say in the classroom to learn, right? So if you use those things to make sure that they understand. And also one thing that we also usually explain to the participants under, I told you the consent covers a number of things, and what participation means is to let them understand that this interview does not come with any direct benefit, right? But then sharing your thoughts, right, or your perception about the program will help us do what improve the program going forward. So over there, we try to let them understand that whatever we are doing with them, we are not coming with any benefits so that they don't expect anything at the end of the interview. We also let them understand that, okay, you participating in the, whether you grant us the interview or not, is not going to affect your relationship with the program. So letting them understand that there is no direct benefit, coming to their level to explain the program to them and then why you are there are some of the things that we put in place to ensure that expectations are minimized. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ernest. And thank you to everyone as well for being such a wonderful audience and being so engaged, so participatory, reflecting, sharing, asking questions, sharing experiences. We are very thankful. And yes, so with the commission, Philemon is pleading with you from VVF that you would do more awareness creation so that more and more people can be familiar with these requirements and make sure that they are complying with everything as necessary. We're at the tail end of the Ghana month, and I want to leave us with an African proverb, which says that no matter how full the river is, it always wants to keep growing. And I think based on all the conversations we've had today, it has come out quite clearly that many of our organizations here do have some idea about these issues of data protection. We may even have some policies in place. We may have some systems in place, but no river is ever full to the point of not ever wanting to grow. There's always room for evolving, room for improvement, room for growing. And so we hope that from all of the things that have been shared today, from the things that will be shared with you via email later on, from other conversations that you may have with the commission or with us, with Ernest, about these issues of data protection and data privacy, your organizational systems will be able to keep growing as well. Thank you very much for spending time with us, and we look forward to seeing you again on our next quarter's webinar. Thank you, all the very best, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Tony.